Hey guys, it's Tealus here. Welcome back to the Hall of the Guardian for the last time. This time we are going to be looking at the Frost Mage specialization. This is the last Mage specialization to take a look at. We'll be looking at what changes will be coming to it in Legion. This will be a two-video series. In the first video we'll be looking at the abilities and artifact weapon for a Frost Mage. If you can see the wonderful artifact weapon on my back here, this is the Frost Mage staff. And then in the second video, we'll be looking at the PvE and PvP talents that will be coming to a Frost Mage in World of Warcraft Legion. Now, I have not looked too in-depth at the PvE and PvP talents. However, I will say things are kind of on the grim side in terms of PvP for a Frost Mage. I've now kind of declared this to myself that the Frost specs, both Frost Mage and Frost Death Knight, will finally be dethroned as the premier specs and will now be kind of relegated to the back compared to something like Fire or Unholy. So I'm going to go through the abilities here and the artifact weapon, and we're going to see what changes are available. There are very few changes. Frost Mage, just like the other Mage specs, have seen very little changes. There is a small change to Frost Mages, very similar to how Fire Mages had a small change to like Combustion and how it worked, and how Fire Blast worked, but it's even less significant to a Frost Mage rotation in my opinion. Overall, I do feel like Frost Mage has lost a bit, and hopefully they will be able to gain back a lot of this through their honor talents and their PvP talents, their PvE and PvP talents. Hopefully they will be able to regain some of this, but right now it's kind of, well, it just doesn't look the greatest. So hopefully things will start to turn out. But let's go ahead and get into the changes for Frost Mage in World of Warcraft Legion. Hopefully I didn't paint too much of a bleak picture here for Frost Mages. There are some nice changes to go around, but overall very little has changed for a Frost Mage. So with that, let's go ahead. I'm going to go with removed, changed, and new abilities. And then after that we will go into the artifact weapon and take a look at what that brings in World of Warcraft Legion. So with that being said, removed abilities, there are only 5 actually. First is Arcane Brilliance. Arcane Brilliance, any type of raid buff has just been removed from the game. That is baseline. Mark of the Wild is gone. Blessings of Kings, etc. They're all gone because basically they're in an effort to make sure that no one was left behind in raids. They give everyone raid buffs, and then when everyone has raid buffs, there's all this overlapping, and there's just like, why is there even a reason to have raid buffs anymore? So it's been removed. Nothing to worry about. Everyone has lost their raid buff. Conjure Refreshment Table. Thank you to the YouTube user who actually pointed this out to me. I've complained a lot about this in several videos about how the tooltips that Blizzard is providing are not very good. They don't explain some things. In Mistweavers, they didn't explain how your clouds are created, etc. And there was another video where they weren't explaining properly, you know, how some of this stuff works, how it's generated, how it's created, where did it go, and I've had problems with it, and I've had to research it, and I always just assumed that Conjure Refreshment Table was either a bug or it was removed. But a YouTube user was able to, a YouTube viewer was able to find out that Conjure Refreshment Table actually appears when you enter a party or raid. So, when you enter a party or raid, this spell will change from Conjure Refreshment to Conjure Refreshment Table. I hate this. Like, what's the reason behind doing this? I understand getting rid of spellbook clutter, but sometimes you're going way too far. And this is just absurd. It's the same irritation and disappointment I had last video with Demonology Warlocks and their demonic circle, summon / teleport, and how that they've combined that into one spell. Why? Why do you do that? What is the reasoning behind that? So that the spell book is slightly smaller? Does it really put such a strain on the game that you have to remove that? I don't know. I would think it doesn't. And so there's really no reason for them to do this, but they somehow think that this is going to be a benefit for the game. I don't know. I don't really know. I don't understand. I don't try to understand. Just know that Conjure Refreshment Table will be there, but only if you are in a party or a raid. In my opinion, it should just be on there as a regular spell. Deep Freeze. Deep Freeze is gone. Okay, so this really hurts. And I was checking the talents just ahead of time to see if Deep Freeze somehow was in here. It may be in here somewhere, but it's gone. And so that's a big deal for Frost Mages. That's kind of been a staple for Frost Mage PvP for a while. And now that it's gone, this is where I think Frost Mage is starting to fall off in terms of its ability to be the master in PvP that it has been for so long. It just finally got its bearing in PvE, and you know, it's starting to be used in PvE where it was never used before. And now I feel like we're going a little bit backwards. Now it still does have the advantage of having more freezes than anyone else. You have your freeze on your water elemental. I believe you can spec into double frost novas, and so you do have that option. So you do have the option to have those extra freezes there, but it really hurts not having deep freeze in your arsenal. Frostfire Bolt has been removed. This is a recent change. It was replaced with something that I think is better, at least in PvP is better, but overall it's not a huge change to Frost Mages. Remove Curse has been removed. Anything that was kind of awkward to be on a spec, like a Soothe for Soothe for a Druid, remove Curse for a Mage. There was a good Hunter one that I can't think of at the moment. Maybe it was like Distracting Shot, or it was Tranquilizing Shot. They've really kind of taken those abilities out across the board. So remove Curse is gone from all mages, so I wouldn't really worry about it, but it is gone. And then lastly, Ice Shards, your passive, that has been removed. That's really not a big deal. I think that was a passive buff on your multi-strike. Multi-strike has been removed as a stat, and I think all of the passive secondary stat bonuses that were given through a passive, I'm glad that they removed. The whole intent of them was basically to say, like, it was supposed to be like a nudge, this is your main secondary stat, which was absurd. Just let the player decide what they want to use for their secondary stat, and then if they really want to min-max, they'll go look online and figure out from the pros on what they should be maxing out. Otherwise, let them play their game and don't artificially give them a detriment because you're trying to nudge them in the direction of this secondary stat or whatever. So I'm glad that that's gone. With that being said, there's several changed abilities. First is Blizzard. Blizzard is no longer channeled, so this is, I think, a welcome change. Blizzard now has a 1.75 cast time, no longer channeled. It's a 7-second cooldown, and it only slows from 30% down from 50%. So this actually could be something you use in PvP. If you are able to dance around as a Frost Mage in your Blizzard, this could be. I'm not sure with Deep Freeze gone and whatnot, I'm not sure how a Frost Mage is going to play. It could be that a Frost Mage now plays as a very close range mage, firing stuff at close range, kind of staying in and out of, just staying just outside melee range, but at the same time playing up close. That could be the way Frost Mage is now going to, like, for sure be playing all the time now. You won't be playing from afar, and Blizzard could play into that, the fact that you can get one off little under 2 seconds and, kite melee around in it and so forth. It's got a pretty large radius, so it could be helpful, it could not, I don't know. That'll be something we have to see. On top of that, they have Cone of Cold, which is another ability that you would use at close range. Its movement slow has been increased from 60% to 70%. I believe Blizzard is trying to just zero in on 70, 50, 30 in terms of their movement speed reduction, and all the other ones are gone. However, I do believe there's a couple of like 90% out there, maybe, I'm not quite sure. But for the most part, it's either 70, 50, or 30 across the board. 30 for stuff that can hit a lot of targets. 50 for the majority of abilities, and then 70 for the really OP stuff. Frostbolt has had its cast time increased by 0.5 seconds, so the enhancement that reduced the cooldown of Frostbolt basically is gone. It reduced it for like a couple of seconds, and then it would reduce it for like your first hit, and then it wouldn't come back for like the next 8 seconds. That part is now gone, and you no longer have access to it. That was an enhancement. It's now gone. Frozen Orb. Enemies hit by Frozen Orb are now slowed for 15 seconds for up to oh man, totally botched that. Frozen Orb, enemies are not hit by the orb are slowed for 15 seconds up from 2 seconds. So it used to be a 2-second slow, now it's a 15-second slow. This is pretty powerful, and Frozen Orb does have a pretty large range. As you can see, it's still hitting even there in the middle there, sitting in the middle of this one, it hits all the way over. I didn't realize that Frozen Orb actually has that insane, it has that range on it. It does not describe its range on here. It describes how far it will go, which is 40 yards, but it doesn't really talk about its AoE range. Its AoE range is roughly what it looked like was about 10 yards, I think. I'm not quite sure on the range of the distance between this stuff. I mean, I can test it right here and see just how far away it takes for me to get a Frostfire Bolt, which is at a 40-yard range. So 40-yard range is right here, and half of that is going to be 20. So we're looking at, yeah, it's about a 10-yard radius. So it's got a pretty significant range in which you can slow people, dance around, and so forth, and you've got that, it should be a 30% slow on the Frost Orb, not Frost Bomb. There we go. 30% slow, and it's now 15 seconds up from 2 seconds, so it's actually a big deal. Much more slow is available to you in that. Ice Lance. It now only hits one target, so this is a bummer. Ice Cleave is now gone. I honestly really loved that, the Ice Cleave. It was one of my favorite things. Last expansion was the expansion in which I finally did Mage a little bit as PvE, and I loved having Frost Cleave. You no longer have that. Ice Lance now will just hit one target. However, the damage is now tripled instead of doubled against frozen targets. I believe this is a change back to where it was the way it used to be. I believe it used to always be tripled, and then they brought it down to doubled for some reason. That is no longer the case. Now it is tripled. Icy Veins now grants haste instead of multi-strike. Multi-strike is gone as a stat, so Icy Veins will now grant haste instead of multi-strike. There was an enhancement that increased that multi-strike bonus to 45%. That enhancement is gone, so now it is flat 30% haste increase instead of a 45% with that enhancement increased with multi-strike. So if you're level 100 Frost Mage, your Icy Veins did a 45% increase of your multi-strike. Now at 110, your Icy Veins is going to be just a 30% increase on your haste. We already talked about Icy Veins. Brain Freeze. So, this has changed because Frostfire Bolt is no longer here. So Brain Freeze, literally, I'll read you my description here. Frostbolt's still the same, everything else different. So, we need to go through this. So Frostbolt has a 16% chance to empower your next Flurry. Okay, first off, before we go any further, the extra 6% chance comes from your artifact weapon. So it's actually baseline 10, so Frostbolt, yes, is still the same. Everything about Frostbolt is still the same. However, it now empowers your next Flurry, which we will get to in new abilities, to apply Winter's Chill to the victim for 1 second and be instant cast. Winter's Chill causes your target to take damage from your spells as if it were frozen. So, we will get back to this when we get to Flurry. We will get to Flurry and then we'll come back to this. But that is the change to Brain Freeze to kind of, now work with the fact that Frostfire Bolt is no longer here. With that being said, it is very new, and I will say, once we get to Flurry, that 1 second may be extended. We'll talk about that when we get back to Flurry, but that is something that may change. With that being said, Fingers of Frost. Fingers of Frost has now been changed. Frostbolt and Frozen Orb now only have a 12% chance to proc instead of a 15% chance to proc, so there is a nerf there. And Blizzard has that 5% chance to grant a charge of Fingers of Frost. So you have 12% for Frostbolt and Frozen Orb to grant the charge, and 5% for Blizzard to grant the Fingers of Frost. Remember, Blizzard, you can now, Blizzard, now you don't have to, you can just go ahead and cast it and let it do its thing. So now you have both Frozen Orb and Blizzard that you can cast and sit there and gain charges of Fingers of Frost, depending on whether or not it's able to get it there. So that's pretty cool. On top of that, the damage is no longer increased from Ice Lance. So this is kind of mitigating. This ends up being a buff. When we get to Brain Freeze and Flurry, this ends up being a buff because basically Ice Lance is now tripled instead of doubled. So, but you lost the damage increase from Fingers of Frost. So there used to be a damage increase from Fingers of Frost. Now, basically you can say that that damage increase has been taken off of Fingers of Frost and put onto Ice Lance through the tripling of its damage instead of doubling, which allows Ice Lance to benefit other abilities like Brain Freeze. So, just so you know, those that's basically the changes for Fingers of Frost there. Mastery Icicles no longer affects Multi-Strike, so Multi-Strike is now gone out of the equation. It no longer applies to Frostfire Bolt. Frostfire Bolt is gone. Otherwise, the rest of your stuff is basically the same. Okay? So nothing has changed there other than it's gotten rid of stuff that you've lost anyways. Frost Armor is getting the same treatment as Icy Veins. It now affects haste instead of multi-strike. Otherwise, the rest of it is still there. You have an 8% haste increase instead of an 8% multi-strike increase. I'm surprised that they kept that in there. The Frost Armor, like the actual armor, the movement speed slowing, it doesn't surprise me. But I'm surprised that the haste buff stayed in there. Multi-strike buff, what was the multi-strike buff, stayed in there because it's a passive buff that technically doesn't need to be there. But they kept it in there, and that's the way it is. So, with that, you have two new abilities. One, it's kind of anticlimactic, because, you know, a lot of Frost, I guess, I personally think it's Frost, this should have been baseline anyways, is Ice Barrier. Ice Barrier is not baseline. It's baseline for all mages, so that's even more insulting, is that Ice Barrier is now baseline for all mages, but you now have a baseline, you don't have to talent into it anymore. And then the new ability that I've alluded to with Brain Freeze is Flurry. And this replaced Frostfire Bolt. This was entered into the game after Frostfire Bolt. So basically, Flurry, you unleash a flurry of ice shards, striking the target 3 times for a total of 67,000 frost damage. Comparison, Frostfire Bolt hits for 45,000. So, if you wanted a comparison, basically I would say the damage is close to the same because of the cast times. They're pretty close. Each shard reduces the target's movement speed by 70% for 1 second, so that's pretty nice. So, now that you know about Flurry and you see how it works, let's go back to Brain Freeze and try and get this to proc. So I need to be casting some Frost Bolts here. So the thing about this that I find weird is that you have a 1 second chance for your you have a 16% chance to empower your next flurry and apply Winter's Chill to the victim for 1 second, okay, and be instant cast. Winter's Chill causes your targets to take damage from your spells if they're frozen, which is basically kind of it's like Fingers of Frost, except for Fingers of Frost only applies to Ice Lance. This will apply to all of your abilities as if they were frozen. The only thing about this, though, is that what else would you use it on? I could be out in the loop with Ice Mages, but you're gonna use it on Ice Lance because you only have 1 second to get this damage out, anyways. Even when I've tried to spam this, I barely get it off in time. So let's get it up. There it is, right there, procced. I'm gonna go ahead and use Flurry, and I'm gonna spam Ice Lance as quickly as possible so I can get my damage. And then even on top of that, it used my Ice Lance charge from Fingers of Frost, which is really disappointing. Let me see if I can get a proc without Ice Lance. In fact, I'll just keep getting rid of Fingers of Frost procs on the target. There it is, right there. So make sure that, okay, there we go. And then I have to use it immediately to get the 1 second timer on getting that effective Winter's Chill. This is a very new iteration, a very new spell to the game. It's very possible that they may buff that Winter's Chill to last longer than just 1 second, because 1 second is absurd. That's very little time for you to actually do something with anything. So they may change that, and it may last more than 1 second. I would expect it to be up to where 3-4 seconds, maybe 5 seconds, for that to last on, for Winter's Chill to linger on. I would not expect it to last only 1 second. So I would expect some changes on that, but we don't really know. We are getting late in the beta process, so we'll see how things play out. So that's actually everything for all the new abilities for a Frost Mage. There really isn't much to change there. In PvE, you lost Cleave, which stinks. You gained Ice Lance, now dealing triple damage, but really you're not going to notice that because damage numbers are damage numbers and they can tweak them however they want. And to be completely honest, getting a huge crit off an Ice Lance against a PvE raid boss isn't nearly as exciting as getting off a huge crit on a PvP player. So it's just it's not the same. So that's kind of disappointing. I really did miss Frost Cleave, my Ice Lance Cleave. So it is now gone from the game. You no longer have access to it, which is kind of disappointing. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the artifact weapon, and let's see if the artifact weapon ability changes how we look at Frost Mages. So this ability is called Eben Bolt. Deals 194,000 Shadow Frost damage and grants 2 charges of Fingers of Frost. So it's a nice, powerful ability. It's on a 45-second cooldown, and then it gives you 2 charges of Fingers of Frost. It's nice, but I don't know. It's not the greatest. You have your Fingers of Frost. It'll deal damage as if it were frozen. But 45-second cooldown for just a big burst in damage, it's honestly really disappointing compared to the other stuff that is available. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at Eben Chill, Great Staff of Elodie. Okay, now you're going to start in the bottom left-hand corner here, and then you'll work your way up through the tree, all the way to the last epic portrait here. And you have 3 epic portraits to look at, which are pretty nice. So let's go ahead and start here. We have Shattering Bolts, increases the critical strike chance of Frostbolt by 15%, 1 rank, so it'll be 15% on the first rank. You have Let It Go, ha 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 ha. You have Let It Go. I will not sing for you guys on this video. The urge is there though. I won't deny it. Increases the critical strike damage of Ice Lance by 12%, so that'll be 4% per rank, 3 ranks. There is the Storm Rages. They're just they're just really ripping off Frozen now. The Storm Rages on. The Storm Rages increases the critical strike chance of Blizzard by 15%. That's 5% per rank, 3 ranks. We have Ice 9. Frostbolt has a chance to generate 2 icicles. I don't know if you guys ever saw that. We'll see if that actually does appear. I did have it appear when I was actually firing it up, because once you get to 5, you'll see maybe 2 of them fire off at once instead of just once. So it's a possibility, but I'm not going to continue to do it. There's Chain Reaction. Frostbolt critical strikes empower Ice Lance, increasing damage dealt by 20% for 6 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. So let's see if we can get this to actually proc, so you can see what it looks like. Oh, there was a Ice 9 right there. And we have all kinds of different procs going on here. I'm just trying to get the proc for Frostbolt. I'll know when I get a critical strike. I need to get a critical strike on Frostbolt, and then I'll know for sure that it actually hit. We keep getting Norms. There's a critical strike right there. That should give me the buff right there. However, it's not showing up anywhere. So once again, this is the problem I'm having with the game, and not showing up, like actual buffs and so forth when they appear. So I got a Frostbolt critical strike back there. Let me double check and make sure it was. Yes, it was a critical strike. However, it did not empower my Ice Lance. So it could be a bug that's not showing up, or maybe it's they're just not showing up at the moment in terms of actual debuffs on the target or buffs on me. So Expect that to be fixed. I expect it to be in there though. There's Jouster. When Ice Lance deals damage, you take 12% less damage for 6 seconds. That's through 4% per rank, 3 ranks. This really is starting to make me think that Frost Mage really is an up close and personal mage spec. It kind of reminds me of the old Rambo spec for hunters. Um, Rambo spec for hunters back in Burning Crusade, it was like half survival, half marksmanship, and you basically danced in between your no-go zone, your range in which you couldn't fire or do anything, and like a 10-yard range. That could be how the new Frost Mage, like how you're gonna be playing as a Frost Mage. There's Shield of Elodie. Increases the damage absorbed by Ice Barrier by 100%. So, yes, it's baseline, but yours is better. 3 ranks, that'll probably be just 33% per rank. So your Ice Barrier is actually really strong. 365,000 damage. That's like a third. Sorry, that's about a fifth of your health. So that's actually significant. We have the 2 abilities here. Even Chill, Black Ice. Even Chill has a chance to empower icicles, increasing damage by 100%. We've actually seen that before. It's fired off an icicle before that's kind of black looking. That's when you know Even Chill has been used. There you go. You see right there, that black one, that was Even Chill right there. Or Black Ice, sorry. The other option over here is it's cold outside. Your Water Elemental's Frostbolt deals 30% increased damage and has a 10% chance to generate a charge of Fingers of Frost. I like this. I wonder how it's going to interact with a certain talent that is available. So we'll take a look at that. Basically it's an empowerment for your Frost Elemental. In the middle here we have Frozen Veins. Frostbolt critical strikes reduce the remaining cooldown on Icy Veins by 1.5 seconds. That'll be hard to actually display. That's a really cool new spell visual though for Icy Veins though. I did not know that was there, so I'm glad I showed that to you guys. That's really cool. And it's going to be really hard to see it actually tick down the actual Icy Veins and so forth. But that's a pretty cool new spell visual for Icy Veins. I'm glad I was able to show that to you. So it's hard to show it tick down, but it does have that 1.5 second. That's 3 ranks, so it'll probably be 0.5 seconds per rank. You have Clarity of Thought. Frostbolt has an additional 6% chance to activate Brain Freeze, so that's what I said. That's where the extra 6% comes from, is this Clarity of Thought talent. 3 ranks, so that'll be 2% per rank. Over here we have Icy Caress. Increases the damage by Frostbolt by 10%, 3 ranks. That'll be 3, 7, and 10, 3, 6, and 10, one of the 2. In the middle, you have Icy Hand. Increases the maximum charges of Fingers of Frost by 1. I have not been able to get that many charges of Finger of Frost, but I know how to pull this off. We can go ahead and just get 1, if I can get it to go. There you can see that black ice there again. Just give me 1 Fingers of Frost charge. I may have to start whipping out Blizzard here to try and quickly get the... Or I could just use Frozen Orb. I guess that would work. That's Frost Bomb. Frost Bomb is not going to give it to me. There we go. Alright. So on top of that, give me an Even Bolt. There's 2. And there's 3. So be careful. It does not show up on your bar that you have 3 charges. It does not show up on your actual HUD that you have 3 charges, so you have to be careful to kind of look in your buff bar to see just how many charges you have. I'm sure there'll be add-ons out that allow you to have a spell visual that shows that you have 3 charges, etc. Up here we have Ice Age. Increases the damage done by your flurry by 15%. That's 3 ranks, so it'll be 5% per rank. Orbital Strike increases the damage of your Frozen Orb by 45%. 3 ranks, so it'll be 15% per rank. And then lastly, we have Chilled to the Core, activating Icy Veins, encases you in ice, increasing frost damage you deal by 20%. So that may have been what that new spell visual was for Icy Veins. That's pretty cool. But increasing frost damage you deal by 20%, and you have the haste buff on top of that. 20 seconds, that's really strong. I really do like that. That's pretty impressive. So That's a nice buff to have overall for a Frost Mage. Otherwise, that's everything for a Frost Mage coming in World of Warcraft Legion in terms of its abilities and its artifact weapons. I'm sorry if you are very disappointed in what you are given in World of Warcraft Legion in terms of a Frost Mage. Hopefully, when we go through the PvE and PvP talents, things will look better and you will like things better. Let me go ahead. One thing I didn't show you was I believe Frost Nova has a new spell visual, so I'm going to use it right here. It's just really simple, but it's really nice. I do like it. But other than that, that is everything for Frost Mages, for their abilities and their talents in World of Warcraft. I'm sorry, their abilities and their artifact weapon in World of Warcraft Legion. In the next video, we will take a look at their PvE and PvP talents and see basically how their PvE talents have changed, and then see what, PvP talents are brought in to change basically the fact that you no longer have deep freeze available to you anymore. And we'll see if there's some PvE talents in there that kind of give back the cleave that you lost with your old, basically your old Ice Lance cleave. Hopefully there's something in there. I do know that Blizzard kind of compensates for that because you no longer have to sit there and channel it, but it is a bummer seeing Ice Lance cleave gone. So with that, I will see you guys in the next video to look at the PvE and PvP talents. Otherwise, this is Tealus. I'll see you guys later. Tealus out.